Welcome back to Watch the Booker Man and to episode number 101 of Paul Heyman's TNA. And we're following up what was not only in the series a landmark episode, but I think in terms of the company, a very, very big night. Bryan Danielson solidifying, legitimising himself as the World Heavyweight Champion, and CM Punk debuting and winning his match. We'll talk more about that later as we open the show with the entrance of the World Heavyweight Champion. He's not out here to talk, he's out here to fight against the man who was part of that attack on him a few weeks ago, and he defeats Kyle O'Reilly in 6 minutes and 40, making him tap out to the LeBell Lock. One, it gives us 6 minutes to just talk about what happened in the pay-per-view, the fact that Kurt Angle is not here tonight, and of course that Bryan Danielson defeated him, and also it just shows and exemplifies the character of Bryan Danielson, which is that he's going to wrestle whenever he can against whoever he can, and it may just be a few nights since his brutal 45-minute match with Kurt Angle, but he's back out and back in the ring, and most importantly, back winning with really good performances. 60's a decent match, but an 86 from Bryan Danielson is really encouraging. More and more signs that he can be the guy to carry this company at the top level. As the American Dragon stands tall in the ring, CM Punk makes his way out from the back. Punk speaks off microphone to the World Heavyweight Champion, reminding him that he has a choice to make. Of course, the dynamic has changed recently, that attack from Future Shock and then Punk's threats towards him. There's a lot more animosity between Danielson and Punk now. He was just trying to keep out of this and focus on his wrestling. Punk says that Bryan saw what happened at the pay-per-view. His answer should be straightforward. Bryan Danielson simply looks to his title. That's his priority. Then to Punk before leaving and heading up the ramp. We advance the storyline with an average segment just because it was only a couple of minutes, but we come back and CM Punk is still in the ring and we deliver a much better segment here. He wastes no time. As we announced last week, Paul Heyman would be returning to Impact after a couple of months away, and CM Punk wants to speak to him right now. Paul Heyman comes out and he's trying to reason with Punk. Of course, he's saying he's had a lot to deal with both personally and professionally. That's why he's not been here. He's not been avoiding CM Punk, and he wants to know now he is back, now he is in the right state to be doing his job properly. He wants to know how they can resolve this situation and move forward. Of course, Punk isn't interested in any sort of diplomacy. He tells Heyman to shut up. There is nothing that is going to stop him on his crusade against this company. He hates everything about this place. He hated it back when he worked here all them years ago, and watching from elsewhere, he hates it even more. But what is emblematic of all those problems from the 10 years of this company, it's the name. If Paul Heyman was serious about changing this company when he came in 20 months ago, that would have been the first thing he addressed. It was a stupid name in 2002 when whatever idiot brain trust came up with it, and it's the reason that this place was never taken seriously. Ring of Honor was a place that respected the history and tradition of professional wrestling while looking to project it into the future. And because of this company and the deep pockets of Dixie Carter, ROH was shut down and cast aside so that the likes of Bryan Danielson, Desmond Wolfe and Samoa Joe, the best wrestlers on this planet, could wrestle for tits and ass wrestling. Punk refuses to allow this company to become synonymous as the home of professional wrestling, because no matter how good this show is, when you see a poster, a billboard outside an arena, when you're flicking through the TV guide, TNA Wrestling has always and will always be a joke, and he is not going to stop until this company is no more. Once he has taken TNA out of existence, Ring of Honor will rise again. But basically what we're putting across here is that as much as this is about the treatment of Ring of Honor, CM Punk has a very personal issue with TNA. He doesn't even believe in a scenario where both of these promotions can coexist. His number one priority is ending TNA, and he does a great job of improvising, as does Paul Heyman, who tries throughout to interject, but it's largely Punk shutting him down and just further running down the promotion. I think around this time in WWE, Punk was talking about a lot of taboo subjects, and that was kind of the storyline, that he was uncontrollable live wire. And I think translating that over to TNA, the idea that he's just running down the company, down to even the name, he's calling out Dixie Carter. I think that hopefully this can be a really impactful segment, and that's why we wanted to save the first interaction between Heyman and Punk, so we could kind of lay the seeds of what CM Punk wants before he finally lays it all on a plate to Paul Heyman. We then move into Mauro and Taz speaking about Kurt Angle's injury. He was already injured going into the match. Over the course of a 45-minute match with Bryan Danielson, it was made a lot worse. They then introduced footage of Kurt Angle having to be helped out of the ring and out of the building after the show. They explained that the former World Heavyweight Champion would not be here tonight, and there is no current timeline for his return. After the back-breaking 15-month title reign, after the last month of that chase of getting it back, the idea is kind of that we're telling Kurt Angle to just sit out for a bit, recharge, so he can come back for another great run. Before the second match of the night, a promo from earlier tonight is shown. Mickie James puts over her match against Madison Rayne and the Amazon. She was given a choice of anybody in the Knockouts locker room to be her partner, and she chose Sarita. So just giving Sarita a little bit of a rub there that she is the choice of the Knockouts champion. But Madison Rayne and the Amazon defeat Mickie James and Sarita in 8 minutes and 1 second. Mickie James dives from the turnbuckle to the outside with the Louvres press that she does, taking the Amazon out. But in the sort of distraction, this allows Madison Rayne maybe poke Sarita in the eye, grab a handful of the tights, and pick up a tainted win over her. It's a decent match of 58 actually, considering you have the Amazon in there with a 19. Mickie, Sarita and Madison Rayne all doing well, but we do lose heat to the Knockouts Championship storyline. After the match, Madison looks to continue her rivalry with Mickie James. She grabs her from the outside. When she did that dive to the outside onto the Amazon, the idea was that she knew that it was taking both of them out, but it's better to not have the Amazon in contention. But Madison Rayne is able to pick her up on the outside and roll her into the ring. She then grabs her loaded glove, which she didn't use during the match, and sets up for the knockout punch. Mickie finds the most unlikely saviour, however, as Tara runs out from the back and comes between the two women. This is obviously a confusing moment for everybody. The commentators put this over. Madison Rayne's expression puts this over. Confused about what's going on, Madison Rayne decides to back off and leave the ring. Even more baffled by this situation, the one person more confused than anybody, Mickie James returns to her feet. Tara rolls to the outside, grabbing the Knockouts Championship, which she's made clear that she wants, and hands it back to Mickie James. Of course, these two former partners turned bitter enemies. The Knockouts champion leaves the ring, uncertain about the intentions of her former partner, and Tara doesn't really give much away. She kind of looks uncomfortable what she's doing. Until we get an explanation from Tara at the very least, nobody's quite sure why this has happened. We then get AJ Styles cutting a promo in the back. He puts over the pain that he's in following Hard Justice. Daniels and AJ went to war with Punk and Samoa Joe. The damage that Joe did to his neck with that muscle buster to the steel steps is one thing, but knowing that he left Daniels to fight against those two alone, they were supposed to be fighting for TNA, and it ended up a 2-on-1 situation. He feels bad about that. Then tonight, he sees CM Punk coming out, laying the law to Paul Heyman, running down this promotion and talking about wiping it off the face of the earth. Well, if the man in charge is back, then AJ Styles too has something to say to him. Styles will be going out later in the evening to call out Paul Heyman. So as well as that opening segment or the early segment with Punk and Heyman, the Ring of Honor representative, talking to Heyman, we're also going to have Mr. TNA speak his mind to Paul. We then switch focus to the Bound for Glory Tag Team Series, and a graphic is shown of both blocks after week 1. This is week 2, and Mauro and Taz talk through the matches that we're going to see tonight on Impact, and those scheduled for this week's Evolve. Up first, WGTT will look to double their tally, getting up to 6 points as they face Creed and Dot, who were defeated last week by the Kings of Wrestling. And while it's an 11-minute 16 match, another injury in this tournament, absolutely unbelievable. I think we've had, well, it's only been 2 weeks, but we had one before with El Generico being ruled out of the tournament, and then we've had 2. Hopefully a bruised tailbone isn't something that's too bad. If not, another replacement will have to be found. But WGTT defeat Creed and Dot, 11 minutes and 16. Benjamin pinning Dot with a pay dirt. Benjamin, of course, head and shoulders above the rest, but a 70 in a match that includes an injury. That's really good. And Benjamin was off his game, so this could have even got better, but I'm very happy overall with a 70, getting the crowd hotter. Benjamin shone, and it's a really good showing for WGTT. Benjamin and Haas stand tall in the ring, having got the job done for a second successive week. With the Kings of Wrestling not in action this time round, WGTT have secured top spot at the end of week 2. On Evolve, ANX will face Steen and London, both pairs looking to pick up their first points in this series. The second hour also opens with somebody looking for revenge on one half of Future Shock, but this time it is Jeff Hardy defeating Adam Cole in 6 minutes and 14. Again, it's a decent match, very much carried by Jeff Hardy, but it's good experience for Adam Cole, albeit in a decisive defeat. After the match, Jeff Hardy and Sting call out the American Wolves, but they also accept that there was an agreement before Hard Justice that means they can't get their rematch until after Bound for Glory, but that doesn't mean they're done with the new World Tag Team Champions. Instead of Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards, ANX come out from the back and they look to brawl with the former World Tag Team Champions. This is a bad idea. Of course, Hardy and Sting are going to get the better of ANX, but Adam Cole grabs Sting by the leg. This seems to sort of even things up. Eventually, the American Wolves do run down. The Icon and the Enigma are now very much outnumbered. Kenny King and Rhett Titus are then able to hold Jeff and Sting in position as Edwards and Richards look set to swing the World Tag Team titles at them. They do stall a little bit as they want to throw some words of disrespect towards TNA and the TNA World Tag Team titles. They may hold these belts, but they still represent Ring of Honor. Their plan is thwarted, however, as two men jump over the guardrail, recognised by Mauro Ranallo as Jay and Mark Briscoe. He also points out that these two men are carrying the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championships over their shoulder. What is going on? Is this a situation where it's going to get even worse for Jeff Hardy and Sting? However, they stand between the champions and the Icon and the Enigma, refusing to back down. The World Tag Team Champions of Ring of Honor face to face with the World Tag Team Champions of TNA. Eventually, the New Age of Honor guys leave the ring and head to the back. They don't want to get into it with the Briscoes and, of course, Jeff Hardy and Sting coming back round. But as you can already tell, tonight is a night of chaos. What's going on with Tara? Punk declaring absolute war that he wants to kill TNA. And now the Briscoes, Ring of Honor guys through and through, standing against the New Age of Honor. So many questions being set up, and of course we're on the road to Bound for Glory, so that is exactly what we want. We want these cliffhangers to keep people interested and hopefully coming back again. But the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions are here, and they are seemingly setting themselves up against American Wolves, who are our TNA champions. Jeremy Borash then looks to get answers to one of the other questions on the night, asking Tara about her actions from earlier in the evening. Tara says that she herself doesn't really quite know what was running through her head at that moment, but since Sacrifice, there's only been one thing on her mind: winning, and keep winning until she reached the top of the rankings once more. Her only goal left in her career right now is a shot at the Knockouts Championship. For months, winning was all she had done, and on Sunday, that ended. It was one moment of taking her eye off the ball in over 4 months, and it cost her, but that has only made her more determined and more sure that she will do anything to become the Knockouts champion. When asked about the defeat to Alyssa Flash and how it may affect those chances, Tara says that everybody knows that loss was a fluke and she will happily face her again next Thursday on Impact. The third match, the rubber match between Flash and Tara, and it could well be said that the winner of that match will put themselves right at the top of the list for a shot at Mickie James' title. Of course, Madison Rayne is still very much interested as well. Sara Del Rey then defeats Taylor Wilde in 11 minutes and 14. It's a good match, good performance from Del Rey, decent from Wilde, and we're starting a storyline here between Hamada and Taylor Wilde because Hamada is at ringside encouraging Taylor Wilde. She really wants her to show that ruthless edge. Hamada has showed that she has it in recent weeks, but Wilde seems to be struggling, and ultimately the ruthless edge of Sara Del Rey is what allows her to pick up the victory with a royal butterfly. After the match, and once Sara Del Rey has headed up the ramp, celebrated, had her moment, Hamada helps Taylor Wilde back to her feet. Despite her best efforts, Wilde once again finds herself coming up short. There's just something not clicking for her at the moment. While she looks to be supportive of her friend, it's also clear that Hamada isn't that impressed with Wilde's performance. She's doing everything she can to encourage and advise her, but it's just not having the decisive effect at the moment. We then get an interview from Amazing Red, who talked about the attack on him from last week. Nobody knew who was responsible. He was blindsided, so he didn't see it happen, but he has a pretty good idea who it was. JB asks how he could possibly know this, and he says not only is there only one man that he can think of in TNA that can hit that hard, but moments before the attack, he had a run-in with Father James Mitchell. Borash asks if this means what he thinks it does, and Amazing Red nods. He'll be calling out the monster next week. So Red is certain that Abyss was the man behind the attack on him last week, and maybe brave, maybe stupid, he's going to the ring to call him out next week. We then get a segment between AJ Styles approaching the World Heavyweight Champion Bryan Danielson. Styles says that since Punk spoke with Bryan earlier before putting his side across to Paul Heyman, he too wants to speak with the World Heavyweight Champion before going out there and talking to the man in charge. AJ Styles says that he has always proudly represented TNA and he's happy to go out and wave that flag tonight. He doesn't expect the same from Bryan Danielson. He's been here less than a year, whereas AJ is coming up on nearly a decade with the company. However, he does suggest that as World Heavyweight Champion of the company, he has a responsibility to at least stand up for the company that he holds the title of. AJ says that he doesn't align in opinions with CM Punk very often, but he agrees that now isn't the time for Bryan to sit on the fence. Bryan's kind of unmoved by this, but he's clearly not happy to be lectured by AJ Styles. Danielson tells the Phenomenal One that he doesn't stick his nose in anybody else's business, and he expects the same from everybody, including AJ Styles. His job is to wrestle, to win, and to defend this championship, and he doesn't see any reason why AJ and Bryan need to get involved with each other. Well, unless he decides that he wants to come for AJ's world title, that is. Bryan then walks off, so again teasing the idea that he has his eye on the Ring of Honor World Championship, as well as currently holding the TNA Heavyweight title, but AJ Styles also not happy, certainly not getting his own way, and not getting Bryan to agree with his demands. We then get a really good main event. Homicide off his game, but this is a really good match between these two sides. I thought we might get a high 60s and the angles would help us get a decent show overall, but a 75 is a very good main event in its own right. I do think we set this to steal the show, and it's probably fair to say they did that. LAX defeat the Young Bucks in 12 minutes and 28 when Hernandez pins Nick Jackson with a border toss. 3 points for LAX in Block B. Good news for them, winning their first match in the Bound for Glory Tag Team Series. LAX stand tall. The current standings come up on the screen as the commentators run through them once again, while they also promote Colt Cabana and Eric Young versus the Motor City Machine Guns, and ANX versus Steen and London for Evolve. The Bound for Glory Tag Team Series just keeps on going. Homicide and Hernandez will be in action next week as well. They'll be facing Colt Cabana and Eric Young, a match that they will feel that they've got a good chance of winning and one that can help them to reach the top of Block B. Of course, Motor City Machine Guns and Beer Money drew last week, so they're both on 1 point. Young Bucks and LAX first and second place with 3 points, and Colt Cabana and Eric Young will understand the importance of their match with the Machine Guns later tonight. We then come back for the final segment of the show. It's another really good one. Happy with how this episode has gone. Not only have the matches delivered, probably better than I expected. Even those two one-sided matches with Bryan and Jeff Hardy both did well. The women's matches, really happy with how this show's gone down, and that's what we're looking for. Big ratings as we go into the biggest show of the year. This 2-month build to Bound for Glory is the most important part of our calendar, and AJ wants to know, when he calls out Paul Heyman, how the man in charge has watched the last month of TNA television and didn't once feel the need to step in. Paul Heyman comes out and AJ is basically saying between Punk, Mr. Anderson, everything else with the New Age of Honor, this company has been in complete chaos. He never trusted Paul Heyman. He was never happy about him coming into this company, but he doesn't see how anybody in the locker room can ever recover their respect for Paul Heyman. Like I said, he never trusted Paul, but right now nobody does. Why is Paul Heyman letting this happen? Because that's the only logical explanation that AJ can come to. He has the power to stop this. He has the power to make the New Age of Honor and Ring of Honor go away, but he never has, even when it was just Tyler Black, Claudio, and Hero with Jimmy Jacobs. AJ was suspicious. He asked if Paul Heyman was in on this from day one with the New Age, and nothing that's happened since then has led him away from that feeling. AJ Styles was accused of being paranoid towards Paul Heyman, but he wants an answer. He demands an answer, and so do the people. Paul Heyman, his head's down and he doesn't know what to say. This is really, you'd expect a straightforward denial. What is Paul Heyman getting out of allowing Ring of Honor and the New Age of Honor to stay here? And when he says nothing, AJ takes this as an admission of guilt. He flips out. Heyman's trying to talk his way out of it, but it looks like AJ Styles is ready to get physical with him. Heyman's saying he only wants what's best for TNA. He just wants to see this company grow and be successful, but AJ Styles isn't having it. We've only ever seen Bobby Lashley get physical with Paul Heyman before, and we saw what happened to him. He was fired. So when AJ Styles looks like he's going to get physical, the commentators are putting over that this could be a very serious incident. Before he can lay a hand on Paul, however, he is jumped from behind by Samoa Joe, who locks in a Kikina clutch. AJ Styles flails, but eventually it begins to fade. Paul Heyman, perhaps because he's absolutely afraid of AJ Styles and he's in a stunned shock, or maybe because there's something more to this idea that AJ Styles has put out there, does nothing. He just watches as Joe drags AJ to the outside. He gets the steel steps again, looks to set up another muscle buster, but has a better idea. He then grabs and removes the protective padding from ringside, exposing the concrete. He climbs up onto the steel steps, and I'm not sure if a muscle buster from the steps onto the concrete is something that you could sort of work in a safe way, so maybe it's something different, but I know that these guys did some crazy spots, so I'm just going to say it happened. When I'm actually saying it out loud, I wrote it in and thinking this was a great idea for an angle, and then I'm imagining a muscle buster from steel steps onto concrete. I'm sure we'll be able to gimmick that in some way, and I'm just overthinking it, but he hits him, and this is our way of giving AJ Styles a kayfabe injury, so it has to be a big spot. It has to be something that does look very, very dangerous and brutal. Joe then walks away with AJ Styles absolutely not moving. He then turns back, rolls into the ring, and picks up the ROH World Championship that AJ Styles dropped when Samoa Joe took him out from behind. He picks it up, puts it over his shoulder, and takes it with him. So Samoa Joe seemingly stealing the Ring of Honor World title, as AJ Styles has to be loaded onto a stretcher, and the last few minutes, or the last couple of minutes of the show, are a very serious, somber tone, with AJ Styles seriously hurt, Samoa Joe having stole his title, and Paul Heyman maybe sat in the corner of the ring just in complete shock, not only because he was almost physically assaulted by AJ Styles, but also what we've just seen happen to the Ring of Honor World Champion. So a crazy, crazy show, I think, overall, with a lot of questions, a lot of, hopefully, intrigue going into the future episodes, and it's come out really well, and 80 is one that I'm very, very happy with. And we'll go now straight into Evolve before we unpack everything at the end of the episode. And the show begins with a recap of what just happened on Impact. I'm not going to go through that, obviously, again, but you can see it on screen at what we highlighted. The Briscoes then speak for the first time, and it's not a very good segment. There's somebody who we're going to have to build up, an actor that aren't that well known to the TNA audience, but two guys who, of course, are really talented, and particularly Jay Briscoe's promos have always been something of a strong suit, I've thought. They speak from their family farm, and their point is that the New Age of Honor doesn't represent them. They've been running around with the Ring of Honor colours on, claiming that they represent that promotion, but they only represent themselves. The New Age of Honor talk about the Wolves, the Kings, ANX, and Future Shock representing tag team wrestling from that promotion. But how can they talk about that division without mentioning their names? They point to the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles over their shoulder. They're not going to stand for that. For them, this isn't TNA or Ring of Honor. This is about the respect that the Briscoes deserve and that these tag team titles are owed. We then go into the Bound for Glory series, Block A, with Steen and London defeating ANX, 11 minutes and 2 seconds, London pinning Rhett Titus with a shooting star press, while ANX are the more established team. For me, Steen and London are much higher on the totem pole. A lot of people off their game in this tournament, but it's still a good match, and the two winners stand tall. They've scored 3 points in their first match, you can't argue with that, and they'll of course be gunning down the other teams in this block. Eric Young then speaks with Colt Cabana, and he says that he knows why things didn't go well for them last week. They weren't in matching gear. He shows Colt Cabana his custom-made singlet. Colt's kind of receptive to this. He's trying to create some sort of rapport with his partner, but he also reminds Eric Young to be himself. Last week he was kind of doing a few of Colt Cabana's moves. Now he's dressing like him. He says, of course, he knows the singlet is a good look, but he just needs Eric Young to remember that he chose him because he wanted Eric Young, not because he wanted a clone of himself. Eric Young's a little bit disheartened, but Cabana is just trying to remind him of what he brings to the table. We then get Jay Lethal and Maria doing a sit-down interview with Mike Tenay, who is asking about Jay Lethal's recent actions. He's known him for a very long time, and he has never seen this side of Jay Lethal. He was one of the most respectful, friendly, affable people in the locker room, and, well, now he's not. Jay Lethal doesn't take kindly to this, but explains that he doesn't give a damn about anybody else anymore, apart from himself and his fiancée. He wants the TNA Evolve Championship, and he is going to stop at nothing to get it. This is about proving himself, showing the kind of man he is to Maria. and he doesn't give a damn what Mike Tenay or anybody else thinks. So further putting over this character of Jay Lethal, which is kind of that he hides behind Maria and that she's very much the one in control of this relationship. She's changed him, corrupted him, whatever you want to say. He's talking about wanting the Evolve Championship and wanting to beat Desmond Wolfe, but you can see through what he says that actually the only thing that he's looking for is the approval of Maria. I did say that she's his fiancée earlier. Of course, she did break off the engagement, so she's not his ex-fiancée, current girlfriend again. It's a little bit complicated. Hamada then defeats Daisy Hayes with Taylor Wilde at ringside, and throughout the match, while beating down Hayes, she is pointing out to Taylor Wilde, this is how you do it. After the match, she does the same, and Wilde will face Mischief next week, Hamada wanting her to put some of these words into practice, and Wilde is taking it on board. She too wants to become more successful, and hopefully that is what will happen. Alyssa Flash then points out that she beat title chasing Tara. Tara is obsessed with this championship, but if her last match is anything to go by, then Alyssa Flash is the one in line for a shot. She agrees to face her on Impact. We then get footage of AJ Styles being stretched out post-show on Impact, and Heyman was asked in the back for a reaction. He was still selling the shock, so gave nothing away before he was confronted by Christopher Daniels, who was absolutely furious with the man in charge and his role in what went down. He didn't try and stop Samoa Joe, and he stood by and watched AJ Styles get seriously hurt. Motor City Machine Guns then defeat Colt Cabana and Eric Young. Unsurprisingly, it has to be said, we do get the crowd buzzing though. Shelley and Sabin continuing to put in encouraging performances, good match and decent wrestling, and they do get 12 minutes, so it's a good showing for Cabana and Eric Young, it has to be said, but I don't think many people would have expected the Machine Guns to lose this one. They stand tall, and by virtue of Beer Money not being in action this week, they have gone top of Block B. It's a 69 rating, so around where we're expecting at the minute. Would have been a promo on MTV. At some point I will have to stop saying that, but that is the follow-up to Hard Justice, and in some ways what I consider the start of the road to Bound for Glory. When I put it in the game, I wasn't quite sure about everything on the show, but having gone through it now, I do feel like it was an action-packed show, set up lots of things, so I am really pleased actually overall with how things have gone. Sonjay Dutt is injured, but it looks like he'll be able to work through it, so that's good to see. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back next week as we continue the build to No Surrender. Loads going on, a number of matches already confirmed. Of course, the Bound for Glory Tag Team Series continuing, 2 knockouts matches, and there's going to be plenty more big moments on that show. Lots to follow up on, so hopefully you'll join me for that. Thank you for watching, as always. Cheers.